Chapter 1. The Storm and the Nocturne. 30 April 1906. The Nord Express halted in the Black Forest. The storm struck with a ferocity that felt almost personal. The Nord Express groaned to an unexpected stop in the remote black heart of the Schwarzwald. No station, no village, only the ancient trees writhing in the wind like dark root-bound titans, their branches beating at the sky. Thunder rolled down through the valleys, deep and resonant as cathedral bells struck by a furious hand. Inside the sleeping car, oil lamps flickered uncertainly. A woman in a heavy S-bend corset clutched a rosary. A businessman muttered about damnable schedules. A maid tried to calm her lady's prized dog, which trembled hysterically. Elodie Valéry sat upright, her sheet pooling near her waist, heart drumming in quiet accompaniment to nature's violence. The air smelled of damp wood, coal smoke, and human fear. She rose and dressed quickly, a simple traveling gown of deep garnet, which made her complexion seem almost moonlit. She twisted her mahogany red hair into a loose knot. The pins refused to hold. A few rebellious strands fell like brushstrokes against her temples. As she stepped into the corridor, she heard the murmur of panic swelling like an overture prayed too loudly. She moved toward the restaurant carriage, unsure why, only that her pulse guided her steps. When she entered, the scene was on the verge of chaos. Passengers talking over one another, a steward wringing his hands, someone sobbing softly near the window streaked with rain. And there, in a neglected corner, stood the battered upright piano. Elodie approached it. The wood was scuffed as if hundreds of travelers had brushed past it without seeing it. Its keys, some yellowed, some chipped, seemed to wait for a touch to awaken them from their dusty slumber. A steward whispered hoarsely, "If mademoiselle might, the passengers are quite—" "I understand," she said gently. She sat. Her fingers rested on the keys. The storm rumbled expectantly. She began to play. A Chopin nocturne, the one she turned to not for audiences, not for acclaim, but for herself. Its melody rose like a flame coaxed from damp tinder, fragile yet persistent. The room softened, the sobs quieted, even the dog stopped shaking. And that was when she felt him. Not heard, not saw, felt. A presence at the doorway, still and watchful. When lightning illuminated the carriage, she glimpsed him fully. A tall man in a long dust coat, boots damp from rain, shoulders squared with military bearing. His face, severe yet beautiful in its austerity, held an unreadable grief. His eyes, that piercing storm gray, fixed upon her with a longing she did not recognize, yet somehow understood. Her breath hitched, but her hands continued playing, automatically, instinctively. When the final chord faded into the trembling air, silence followed. Not absence, but reverence. Elodie rose. He did not step aside. She approached him slowly. Their eyes held, an entire conversation, spoken without breath. Lightning flared again, and in that brief white glow she saw everything she frightened. Fate. She passed him, their shoulders nearly brushed. He inclined his head, the gesture crisp, yet strangely vulnerable. Not a word was spoken, yet both would remember that moment until the end of their days. 1st of May, 1906, dawn over Württemberg. The storm had passed, leaving behind a washed-clean world. The Nord Express resumed its journey, steam curling like morning breath across green meadows. Elodie stepped out during a short stop. Dew clung to the station's wooden platform like tiny beads of glass. The air tasted of earth and renewal. She felt different, or perhaps too aware. She scanned the platform. For what, she would not admit. He was not there. But he was, watching from the opposite end, half hidden by a column, silently reprimanding himself for indulging in the foolish impulse to look for her. When the whistle blew, they boarded separate cars, thinking it an end. It was only a beginning.
Chapter 2. White Lilacs in Vienna. 4 May 1906. Vienna. Musikverein. Vienna in spring carries a particular scent, a mingling of horse sweat, melting snow, and the faint perfume of budding linden trees. When Elodie arrived for her recital, the city glowed under pale golden light. Carriages clattered over cobblestones, gas lamps flickered in the slow dusk. The Musikverein glittered like a gilded casket. Inside, the audience awaited her with reverent expectation. Elodie played with a fire she had not felt in years. Chopin, Debussy, Liszt, each piece pouring from her fingers as though her heart had cracked and something luminous spilled out. She did not understand why she felt so alive, or rather, she refused to name the reason. Afterward, in her dressing room, she found the bouquet. White lilacs. Perfect. Untouched. The perfume rose like memory. No signature. Only a folded note. Я помню чудное мгновенье. I remember a wondrous moment. Her breath caught. The words trembled in her hands. That night, she stepped into the courtyard behind the hall, craving air. The fountain murmured softly. The moon glowed like polished bone. He stood beside the fountain, Captain Nikolai Alexandrovich Voronin. This time he bowed. Your performance, he said, was extraordinary. You speak this time, she said softly. This time, he replied, I cannot help it. They walked beneath the archways, speaking in low tones. She sensed how tightly he controlled every word, how discipline shaped even his silences. Yet the way he looked at her, as if she were a star glimpsed between clouds, betrayed something raw. When they parted, the air felt strangely thin. Chapter 2. White Lilacs in Vienna. 4 May 1906. Vienna. Musikverein. Vienna in spring carries a particular scent, a mingling of horse sweat, melting snow, and the faint perfume of budding linden trees. When Elodie arrived for her recital, the city glowed under pale golden light. Carriages clattered over cobblestones. Gas lamps flickered in the slow dusk. The Musikverein glittered like a gilded casket. Inside, the audience awaited her with reverent expectation. Elodie played with a fire she had not felt in years. Chopin, Debussy, Liszt, each piece pouring from her fingers as though her heart had cracked and something luminous spilled out. She did not understand why she felt so alive, or rather, she refused to name the reason. Afterward, in her dressing room, she found the bouquet. White lilacs. Perfect. Untouched. The perfume rose like memory. No signature. Only a folded note. Я помню чудное мгновенье. I remember a wondrous moment. Her breath caught. The words trembled in her hands. That night she stepped into the courtyard behind the hall, craving air. The fountain murmured softly. The moon glowed like polished bone. He stood beside the fountain. Captain Nikolai Alexandrovich Voronin. This time he bowed. Your performance, he said, was extraordinary. This time you speak, she said softly. This time, he replied, I cannot help it." They walked beneath the archways, speaking in low tones. She sensed how tightly he controlled every word, how discipline shaped even his silences. Yet the way he looked at her, as if she were a star glimpsed between clouds, betrayed something raw. When they parted, the air felt strangely thin. Chapter 4. The Castle Above the River. 20th of June, 1906, Bohemian countryside. Elodie arrived at her godmother's Baroque castle as summer's heat began its slow ascent. The structure stood modestly yet elegantly above the Vltava, its stucco facade the color of old parchment. The air here felt different, quieter, suspended, as though time itself drifted more slowly. She expected solitude. Instead, she found him. On the third day, a rider approached, horse breathing heavily, its dark mane damp from the journey. Nikolai dismounted with practiced ease, swept off his hat, and bowed. "I was told," he said, "of a charming lodge near here. Perhaps you might direct me." "There is no lodge," she answered. He dared a hint of a smile. "Then I have traveled very far by mistake." Her godmother insisted on hospitality. They took tea beneath the arbor. Conversations deepened. Sunset bled across the sky. When he left that night, she felt the air collapse inward, as if a room suddenly emptied of oxygen. The next day, he returned. And the next. Summer took them in its embrace. Chapter 5. The Long Golden Days. Here I will extend the story substantially by adding numerous scenes to ensure the story is much longer. Late June. Lessons in Light and Shadow. They developed a rhythm. In the mornings they walked the poppy fields where red petals brushed against their clothes. Sometimes she carried a parasol. Sometimes she forgot it and let the sun warm her pale skin. They argued about philosophy. She championed beauty as salvation. He insisted duty outweighed desire. Yet their disagreements were threaded with laughter and tension, like violin strings tightening toward perfect pitch. One morning, while he helped her over a low stone wall, his hand closed around hers. They froze. The contact was brief, accidental, but it sent a tremor through them both. He withdrew first, jaw clenched. "Forgive me," his eyes said. "Don't," hers replied silently. Early July, midday heat and dusk conversations. The Bohemian countryside grew lush with summer. They rode horses along dusty paths. He corrected her posture gently, his touch impersonal but charged. They studied clouds reflected in the river. He showed her Russian phrases. She stumbled over the gentle consonants, and he laughed, a sound she had not yet heard, startling in its warmth. One night they sat on a fallen tree trunk, fireflies drifting through the twilight like wandering souls. He told her haltingly about the 1905 uprising, how he had received orders he could not refuse, how blood spilled on snow never truly melted from memory. "I thought I could bury it," he said, "but some ghosts sit at your table even when no chair is set for them." She touched his sleeve. "Music saved me once," she whispered. "It could save you too." "It cannot change what I have done." "No," she answered, "but it can change what you become." He looked at her then with something like hope and terror intertwined. 12 July, the storm waltz, expanded. The storm arrived suddenly, ripping open the evening skies. Sheets of rain hammered the castle roof. Elodie and Nikolai found themselves in the deserted ballroom, windows alive with lightning. She crossed the marble floor, pale skirts swirling. He stood in the center, gloves tucked beneath his arm. "Dance with me," she said. He hesitated. "I should not." "You already are," she answered, offering her hand. He stepped forward, and the world contracted to the space between them. They danced slow at first, then faster, the thunder punctuating each turn. Lightning carved their silhouettes on gold-framed mirrors. Rain drummed upon the windows like impatient hearts. Her breath mingled with his. Her hand trembled in his restraint frayed like old silk. They stopped. Silence crashed. He stepped back as though burned. "Elodie, forgive me." "For what?" she whispered. "For wanting what I cannot have." 14 July, the kiss, expanded. Rain chased them beneath the stone archway. She was laughing softly, cheeks flushed. He leaned against the cold wall, trembling with the effort not to touch her. "You cannot keep pretending," she said. "What?" "That this is nothing." Lightning illuminated their faces, their eyes collided. He cupped her jaw slowly, as if awaiting her refusal, but she leaned into his touch. With a broken breath, he bent his head and kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of rain, desperation, years of loneliness, and the terrifying sweetness of possibility. She clung to him. He held her as though protecting something fragile and doomed. When they broke apart, her tears mingled with rain. "I cannot be with a soldier," she whispered, "and I cannot be anything else." They stepped away from each other, terrified of what they had unleashed.
Chapter 6. Two Letters That Shatter Summer. 22 July 1906. Noon heat. Shattered calm. The American tour offer arrived with the Morning Post. Elegant stationery, lavish terms, a dream she had cultivated since childhood. Her hands trembled as she read. That afternoon, Nikolai received his orders. Report to Warsaw. Reinforcements required. Departure early August. He found her beneath an oak tree. "We must be rational," he began. "Yes," she said, though she felt her heart tearing. "Our lives cannot join." "I know. You belong to the world," he said, "to music." "You belong to war," she said bitterly. He flinched. They argued fiercely, painfully, then fell into devastated silence. For days they avoided each other, the castle echoing with absence. Chapter 7. The Final Night. 14 August 1906. Under the Perseids. Expanded. The meteor shower streaked across the heavens like silver calligraphy. The air was warm, the river murmuring below. He waited on the bluff. She approached quietly, her white shawl glowing faintly in starlight. Neither spoke. He removed his gloves slowly, each motion deliberate. His fingers traced her cheek, the hollow of her throat, the trembling of her breath. "Elodie," he whispered, "if I touch you again, I will never let you go." "Then touch me." Their lips met, and this time nothing held them back. They sank together into the grass, bodies merging with urgent tenderness, the scent of summer clover rising around them. She kissed the scar along his ribs, reverent as a prayer. He murmured Russian endearments against her skin, as if naming her for the first and last time. They loved each other until the meteors faded. She slept briefly afterward, curled against him. He watched her, memorizing every freckle, every line of her profile.
At dawn he dressed silently, placed his officer's cross around her neck. "Forgive me," he whispered to the morning air. Then he mounted his horse and rode away, disappearing into the mist bleeding up from the riverbanks. She woke alone. A cry tore from her throat, no sound, only anguish. Chapter 8. The Years That Followed. September 1906, New York Harbor. Elodie traveled to America, performing to great acclaim. Concert halls rose for her in standing ovations. Critics hailed her as a prodigy of emotional depth. But each night she removed her gown and found the weight of his cross against her collarbone, a reminder of a life unlived. 1907 to 1910, wandering the continents. She traveled relentlessly, Paris, London, Moscow, though she avoided St. Petersburg. His letters never came. She told herself he lived. She told herself to forget. Both were lies. 1914, the Great War erupted. News from Russia grew fragmented and grim. Sometimes she dreamed of him bleeding in snow. Sometimes she dreamed of their summer. Neither dream brought peace. Epilogue. The Letter. Geneva, October 1917. An envelope arrived, worn, foreign, trembling with history. Inside was a short letter. Mademoiselle Valéry, if you still keep the memory of Captain Voronin, I write to tell you he fell this summer during the Brusilov offensive. His final effects contained only 2 items, a small leather notebook and a pressed sprig of white lilac. He spoke your name before the end. Forgive me for bringing sorrow. Major Pavel Sidorov. Elodie pressed the paper to her lips. Outside her window, autumn leaves drifted like extinguished flames. She wore his cross beneath her blouse, as she had for 11 years. She stood by the lake until dusk, and whispered into the wind, "You were the only summer I ever lived." The wind carried her words away, toward a sky where the last light of evening glowed like a distant, vanishing star.